happy Equinox, and also welcome to the global meeting on the Equinox. So I'm Sanchita Shekhar. I'm currently in Chennai, India, and our hosts for today is going to be me, and then there's Robert, who's in Lusaka, Zambia, and Lena, who's in Copenhagen. So this is the Africa zone, and we're the fifth event of the day. So we've gone through the world already. We've gone through Australia, in East Asia, then we did India, the Middle East, and we had a little break, and now we're in Africa. And so the speakers we're going to hear from today are Nayombi Muliyunda from Zambia and Patrick Ogibo Jr. from Nigeria. If I pronounced your name wrong, please let me know and then I'll correct it. So the overall theme for today is what.
That sounds good.
It's okay? Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so the overall theme for today is what it means to be human. And in this Equinox specifically, we're doing the theme of Bildung beyond conformity. So before we get started, I think Lena wants to go through some practical info and logistics with you. Okay?
Yeah, I'll just start by saying why we chose this topic with Bildung and beyond conformity. And it was because we were discussing what should be the theme this time. What haven't we discussed? And we looked at the world and saw a lot of very disturbing changes going on, and talking about how do we educate for the times that we're in? How can we create a civilization that can maintain rule of law, democracy, freedom, and all the stuff that allows us to actually be as human as possible and get as much out of life as possible? And one of the things that we started talking about was conformity, because on the one hand, we do need to conform to our society, our surroundings, our family, and the norms and values around us, because otherwise we're not going to be good friends, spouses, co-workers, colleagues, and so forth, because you will just be somebody who can't be trusted if you don't play by the rules. But we can't live our lives in conformity and just do what everybody expects from us all the time, because sometimes the other people are wrong and we are right, or we are wrong and they're right. And so we need to be able to accept that other people are different from us, have different opinions, and we need to explore that together. But that also means that we need to develop our own sense of autonomy, nonconformity, and moral backbone, so we dare speak up and say, I don't agree with this, or I think we should go this way when everybody else want to go that way. And we need to be able to come up with a good argument for it and stand up for that. So on the one hand, we do need to conform during our childhood and teenage years into adulthood as well, but we also do need to evolve beyond it and be able to take individual responsibility and also show agency and act when other people might just sit around and wait, because if we all just sit around and wait, nothing is ever going to happen. So that's the perhaps non-conformity part, but it's important. So that's the theme, and that's what we want to explore from different angles. Then there's the practicalities and a couple of rituals. And the first little ritual we have is that whenever we start these global meetings on Equinox, we would like to know where people are participating from. So there's now a link in the chat. It says Padlet. And if you click on that, some of you have been here before during the day, but if you click on the Padlet, you will see a world map. And in the bottom right-hand corner, if you're on a computer screen, there is a pink dot with a plus sign in it. And if you click on that plus sign, you'll get a little box where you can write what town you're in or city, and you can put a pin on the map. And over the course of the day, hopefully we'll get a pin from all the participants, and then we'll have a nice global meeting on Equinox Bildung map of the world that we can show people and say we actually did cover the entire world and had conversations around the globe at the global meeting on Equinox. Yeah, and then we have a little other sort of thing before we get started with the speakers, and that's a survey, because we're trying to find out as we travel around the globe what are the most significant contributions from each of the 8 culture zones. So now we have a survey monkey. And at the Survey Monkey, if you click on that link, you will get to a question about what is the most significant thing coming out of Africa. And There are 5 options, and at the end of the event, we will reveal what the Bildung people think is the most important thing coming out of Africa. And I can reveal that in Oceania, people found the boomerang to be the most significant thing. So let's see. It even beat, I think that was the instant coffee. So we got some important stuff from all over the globe here. And we will see the result at the end of the event, the session. So, yep. And now we're in Africa. Sanchita.
Perfect. So I just took a look at the survey and I can't decide if coffee is more important or if human beings are. So I guess we'll find out. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce our speakers for today, a little bit more about them, and they'll obviously tell us a little bit more about themselves as well. Our first speaker for today, because ladies first, is Nayombe Martha Muliunda from Zambia. She's a dedicated karate practitioner and teacher and has challenged several stereotypes by excelling in a sport where women are underrepresented and underestimated. So what she wants to talk about today is how for her to be human is to enter spaces where a girl is told that they do not belong, and to rise with discipline and resilience, and to hopefully inspire many other people to do the same. So we're going to have 10 minutes per speaker, and I'll let you know a minute before if you're going to go over, just so you're aware. And our second speaker today is going to be Mr. Patrick Ogibo Jr. from Nigeria. He's the founding partner at Next Year, a member of the Presidential Economic Coordinating Council of Nigeria, and a member of the Anambra State Education Advisory Council. He's also previously served as a senior fellow at the Musawa Rahmani Center for Business and Government at the Harvard Kennedy School. And Mr. Ogibo's reflections will focus on the dignity and confidence as essential conditions for human development. So the stage is yours. Mulianda, if you'd like to go ahead.
Good afternoon here. It's in the afternoon in Zambia. I don't know what time it is around the world, whichever part you're in the world. It's hello to everyone. My name is Nayombe Muliunda, and I am called Shihan Nayombe. Shihan simply means master in karate. I am the highest ranked female in my country, and I run a dojo that teaches karate. Obviously, we're speaking about women in karate that have, penetrated spaces that are predominantly male. And I am also the chairperson of the Gender Commission for Region South Africa, where we have 10 member countries. I was recently appointed to that. I am also the executive member for the Zambia Martial Arts Federation, also in charge of women. So a lot of my work is around empowering young women and girls, specifically in karate and education. So what it means to be human for me is being human has always been walking a road that will be easy, but walking it anyway, to embrace strength and vulnerability in equal measure, knowing that both are essential in shaping who we are. What do I mean by that? It means recognizing that fear can be a stumbling block, but you continue on the path that is before you. It is courageous to stand in spaces where ordinarily would not be available to you, especially me as a woman. My journey in karate has been that lesson, a constant reminder of this imbalance, as I will be the only female more often than not. But it has taught me that humility is not about, humanity actually is not about dominance, but about discipline, respect for self, and courage to rise above each time we fall. So I refuse to shrink in the face of imbalance, where oftentimes in the dojo I was outnumbered and often very often underestimated. You can imagine how intimidating such a space can be. To this day, I still find myself as the only female among men. This has continued as I am now navigating the space in higher leadership, where I am still underestimated simply because I'm a woman. But am I less human? No, I am a human who is a woman. Does being a woman make me incapable of leadership? I would answer that question outright no, because as I make this presentation, I am the only karate coach, male or female actually, who has established a fully fledged dojo in Zambia with a focus not only on karate training, but also emphasizing the need for education. Because I know education is the greatest empowerment you can give to a girl child, for her to fully have a voice. I mean, if a girl is educated, they're going to know what their rights are. They're going to know who to approach when they're violated. You know, they're going to actually defend themselves because they're educated. If a woman has access to housing, there's no way she is going to be abused by a spouse who one day wakes up and says, get out of my house, which we see often in Zambia. So for me, self-defense goes beyond just actually fighting someone, physically handling someone. Self-defense is all these aspects that are socially inclined or economically inclined. In all this, I have tried to turn every obstacle into a learning opportunity where I am faced with a situation and I even feel the environment that I am not wanted here. Just by being there is a statement that I am an empowered woman. So for me, what it means to be human is also taking responsibility and refusing to conform to the norm. You know, who says a woman cannot train karate? Who says she cannot be in a leadership position if she is capable? And if she has the knowledge, why isn't she able to lead? Right now, I just stated earlier that I have established a dojo that is focused on training and education. And being the only person in the country to have done that is a great statement already on itself. And I find that it intimidates a lot of men because it's not the norm, you know? So many things have happened along the way for me to get to where I am. Obviously, the experiences that I have had along the way have helped shape everything that I'm doing right now. But for the most part, I think through Girl Kicks Foundation and the various collaborations that I have established with different entities, you know, I am still collaborating with Fair Fight in the Netherlands. I'm collaborating with Kok Melwa Foundation under Stephen Chan, which is in the UK. I'm collaborating with huge entities, companies like Trade Kings, which is a huge conglomerate. All these people have bought into the vision. Some of them already had the vision, and they know that a woman is capable of leading. And I think they have given me strength in that. But I have seen what it means to extend hope to underprivileged girls because I know and have experienced poverty firsthand. If you're in the last Bildung, I spoke a lot about my childhood growing up and how I experienced poverty at a time where I didn't know that people actually go through these things because I was, you know, a privileged child. But having experienced that, I also want to give these girls a platform, not only to learn karate, not only to compete in international competitions and be able to travel, but karate is a way of life. It is a character building exercise to have a sense of self-respect, resilience, and a never giving up attitude. A girl child equipped with this, they will find purpose and discover that their voice is powerful and that they have the right to dream, that nothing is out of their reach once they develop that character. And that's why we're using karate for education. To be human is not to be perfect, or perfection. It is progress that is attained by building small progressive blocks, which are a deliberate but yet powerful move towards one's empowerment. This directly can affect the next person. So it is humility, knowing that we are all learning and relearning to conform to the current times, such as global warming and its effects on mankind. And we have had a shift in how global warming has affected the economy in our country. I think a year ago we experienced a drought, and there was, very little food. There was a high rise in, basic commodities. So those are the effects of global warming. How do we relearn? How do we adapt to these situations? And for me, I believe if someone has a strong character, they will be able to find solutions. If they are empowered with education, they will think outside the box and find solutions and just try to conform to what the world is turning into now. So above all, to be human for me is love. Love expressed through service, mentorship, the way I mentor the girls, through the belief that when a girl rises, an entire community is uplifted. We are trying to create in these young women female leaders that I believe are the backbone of this economy and of the world, if I may put it like that, because I know there are a lot of empowered women and, doing a lot of great things in their communities. And when a woman leads, I think, the whole family, the whole community is uplifted. So for me, that I hold that very dear. And I'll just end by saying, my presentation is short, by the way, because I have spent so much on this. I will just end by saying that to me, it is the biggest meaning of being human, to love and to be able to uplift the next person. And I'm so proud that I'm able to do it with a skill that I have practiced for 29 years now, a skill that helped me, come out of poverty. And I believe that transferring this knowledge to the next girl will be very helpful for the next generation. So that's my presentation and my take on what it means to be human and not conforming to the norms.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Naomi. This is so interesting and wonderful to hear. And I think what you said about to be human is to love, I think that really resonated with me. And I think I've also been able to hear it in a lot of the talks that have been given since the last Bildung Day and this one. One thing that you said really stuck with me, which I've never thought about, which I just wonder if you have a comment on, which is that self-defense is also socially inclined and economically inclined. I have never heard that before, what you just said. So if you have anything to say about it, that'd be great. And then maybe we can move ahead.
So when I sat down and thought about self-defense and how karate is perceived, especially in Zambia, every time you talk about karate, the only thing that people think about is people fighting each other. I mean, the one thing that I get, especially from men, is that, so you think you can beat me up? And obviously I'll say, yes, I can, because I'm underestimated. But when I looked at self-defense and looked at the issues that women go through in general in terms of gender-based violence in Zambia, is that they are prone to the abuse because they are not empowered, because they're less educated, and they're with this man who just takes advantage of them because he knows that this woman has nowhere to go. So he ends up abusing this woman. So self-defense, by educating women, it means you equip them with a self-defense too that entails that they don't have to physically someone. They will use that education to empower themselves for them to get away from this abuse. When we talk about housing, if we go ahead and think, okay, this woman has, there has been divorced. She's got 3 kids. She doesn't have a home. She's also prone to abuse because having house is a form of self-defense because no one will kick you with your kids. Half the time, the mother is the one who takes care of the kids. So that in itself is self-defense. So it's economically inclined because if a woman does not have the capacity to get housing, does not have the capacity to even just get basic, information from a legal aid clinic or something like that, already she's vulnerable before he even fights off this man. And that's why I stated that economically inclined, we look at holistically because it fits into every aspect of the economy. And if we relate self-defense to all these things, what we are saying is that we don't need to fight first. Let's look what we have. How do we speak to people? Do we have the education to be able to defend ourselves before we even fight someone? Do we have the means to start up a small business even when a woman is kicked out and say, okay, how am I going to feed this kid? At least you have some form of skill to help you with that. That is the reason why I put that statement, to just put it holistically, relating it to our daily life.
Yeah, and I think you're right because you're not just empowered physically, you're empowered in so many different ways. And I think it's wonderful what you're doing. You're doing it in multiple ways. You're empowering them physically, you're teaching them to fight, you're also giving them an education. I think that's really awesome. Okay, let's go to
Thank you.
Patrick. And Patrick, the floor is yours. We're excited about your topic of beyond conformity and the confidence to develop.
Fantastic. I prepared a 15-minute paper, so maybe if you gift me some of her minutes, that would work perfectly. But the title of my paper is The Dignity Imperative: Poverty, Confidence, and the Courage to be Human Beyond Conformity. Introduction. Well, philosophers and theologians and social theorists have long debated what it means to be human. The question is especially urgent in Africa, where ongoing deprivation, particularly the expanding gap with the rest of the world, raises questions about the self-worth of its people. In this context, poverty is not economic, but also social and psychological, limiting dignity, agency, and self-expression. To be fully human, individuals and societies must develop confidence and attain autonomy to be creative, which are vital for authenticity and agency. They must break free from any intellectual constraints and foster original thinking and autonomous action beyond the confines of the global development hierarchy. This paper explores how poverty affects dignity and agency and argues that the genuine development requires the confidence to challenge prevailing paradigms. To be human, no doubt being human involves several interconnected aspects, including biology, cognition, social attributes, and self-awareness. Immanuel Kant advances the discussion further. He conceptualized human nature around rationality and moral capacities. Humans are rational beings capable of autonomous thought and can govern themselves through reason rather than instincts. It is this rational capacity that endows humans with dignity and self-worth. Dignity, therefore, is central to his understanding of the human. African founding fathers embraced Kant's ideas. Restoring the people's dignity was more than political rhetoric. It was a core motivation that influenced ideologies, policies, and cultural movements during decolonization. Leopold Sédar's negritude, or Nkrumah's questioning of the notion of the Dark Continent, or Nyerere's Ujamaa, Kenyatta, Kaunda, Lumumba, and others in that pioneering generation prioritized dignity, economic independence, and cultural authenticity. Zik, Nigeria's first president, established the motto of my alma mater, the University of Nigeria, as restoring the dignity of man. These leaders faced significant challenges, with some assassinated, Lumumba and Biko, and others overthrown by Western-backed dissidents, Nkrumah and Sankara. Claude Akey's book, Democracy and Development in Africa, criticizes that 3 decades after independence, Africa either stagnated or regressed. He attributed these issues to external development models that ignored local voices and political realities. He talked about the broken chain between democracy and development and the extractive colonial era political structures that disguised as democracy. Akey argued that Africa's failure arise from excluding African voices and denying agency rather than from Africa's incapacity. Destroying the spirit. Africa's experience demonstrates the erosion of dignity across various epochs. The colonial ideology depicts Africans as incapable of self-rule. The Dark Continent narrative portrays the continent as lacking history, civilization, or any significant human achievements. In fact, it looks at Africans as primitives living in the Hobbesian state of nature before the angels came from Europe to save Africans. The psychological impact of such an attack did not fade with changing flags at independence. In fact, according to Frantz Fanon, it transformed into internalized racism, where colonized people began to view themselves through the colonizers' dehumanizing lenses. Post-colonial bureaucrats favored external knowledge and solutions over indigenous ones. In modern times, development discourses depict Africa as perpetually in a beggarly position, in need of or awaiting external salvation. Economic relationships maintain the extractive colonial patterns by extracting raw materials and importing finished products. The question could be, why can't Africa free itself from this colonial era psychological scar? Some may even wonder why 6 decades after colonial rule ended, the continent still blames a period that lasted roughly 60 to 80 years for its struggles, its current struggles. Well, Seligman's work on learned helplessness is relevant in understanding this. In the experiment, he placed dogs in a box where they received electric shocks. Dogs previously exposed to unavoidable shocks in a different setting failed to escape the box even when escape was possible, believing such efforts as futile. Conversely, dogs with no prior experience learn to jump out of the barrier. Africa's colonial past and ongoing extractive Western-influenced post-independence policies keep us trapped in this same Seligman's cycle. These leaders are subject to epistemic conformity, where they're looking at external experts to tell them what to do. Remember the old saying that no one ever gets fired for hiring IBM. Today, it is safer for African leaders to claim that they implemented directives of the World Bank or IMF without engaging in any genuine thoughts about solutions to their country's problems. The courageous ones who refused. There are some African leaders who refused to conform or be bound by Seligman's box. They gained the confidence to challenge Western design processes. Several of these examples can be seen in countries that have consistently improved citizens' quality of life and led in GDP per capita. If we look at a country like Botswana, they rejected the liberalization gospel of the Bretton Woods institutions when it came to privatizing their diamond industry. They insisted on a 50-50 partnership with De Beers and focused and insisted on local value addition, which created thousands of jobs in their country. Rwanda's Paul Kagame rejected user fees and fully market-based health solutions, opting instead for community-based health insurance schemes, and achieved over 90% coverage, reducing child mortality from 196 per thousand births in 1990 to 31 in 2019. And this went against, many of the advice of the international health economists. In the 1970s, when development theories favored input substitution, political leaders in Mauritius had the confidence to go against the grain. They created export processing zones. They offered investment packages, which the economists said was a race to the bottom. Today, they're one of the top players in the textile markets and created hundreds of thousands of jobs. If you go to Morocco, similar things, they intentionally developed and selected winners in their automotive and aerospace sector. And today, they're big exporters of automobile, and they've attracted Boeing and Airbus to their country. Well, if I look at my country, Nigeria, we adopted the World Bank Structural Adjustment Program, even after active debates by Nigerian economists and intellectuals warned that it would cause hardship and that there were limited benefits. The military administration at the time lacked the confidence to resist the proposed measures. Now, how do we build confidence? Drawing from various sources, particularly John Paul Sartre's analysis of human freedom, poverty is not just a shortage of resources, but a constraint on one's ability to define oneself or realize one's potential. Again, Fanon calls it inferiority complexes. Therefore, for Africa to develop, it must first restore its dignity, which will promote confidence and subsequently the courage to seek authenticity and autonomy, and dismantle the mental and physical barriers that we face. Africa must trust their analytical ability and capacity for independent thought. The continent must believe in its ability to produce novel solutions rather than merely adopting existing models. It needs leaders with the strength to act according to internal values instead of conforming to external pressure. They should take pride in indigenous knowledge systems while engaging constructively with external perspectives. There must be a willingness to challenge existing power structures and advocate for alternatives. I see I'm running out of time. If I skip forward towards dignified humanity. Now, in conclusion, this paper has argued that the authentic humanity requires the preservation of dignity through confident resistance to conformity, particularly the conformity imposed by economic marginalization. The African development experience illustrates how poverty functions not merely as material deprivation, but as a systematic erosion of confidence in human agency. The path towards dignified humanity lies in cultivating the confidence in one's capacity for autonomous thought, to analyze problems independently, and to develop contextually appropriate solutions. The confidence enables individuals and societies to resist the boxes that global power structures construct, to refuse the role of perpetual beggarly recipients, and to claim their space as creators and problem solvers. The answer lies not in conforming to others' expectations, but in having the courage to define oneself, to think beyond imposed limitations, and to act with the confidence that authentic human agency deserves. To be human means to possess the unshakable conviction that one's thoughts matter, that one's capabilities are real, and that one's dignity is non-negotiable. Thanks for your attention, and I look forward to the engagement.
Thank you, Patrick. This was such a wonderful and well thought out talk. I really loved how both you and Nayombe brought in different aspects of thinking together. So for example, this idea of poverty not just being economic, but also it being creating a certain inferiority complex in your ability to think, and the confidence was something I've never thought about. So thank you for bringing in these perspectives. I'm sure we all have a lot of questions, so I think we're going to break into breakouts right now, right, Lena? Is that right?
Yes, we are. So part of the global meeting on Equinox is to get to actually meet people from around the globe. And I've created some breakout rooms. There's 3 to 4 people in each one of them. We're going to keep the speakers here in the main room so that they don't continue speaking except with us, because you should have a chance to speak with each other. And they're only wonderful people, because I know most of you, and I believe that the people that I don't know are just as wonderful. So you're going to have a really good time when you join the breakout room, and we'll keep Patrick and Naomi in here in the main session. So see you in 20 minutes, and then we'll have the Q&A. They will just have a good time, hopefully, and they will come back and have met some new people. Yes, Fullerin.
So I didn't expect what I got from Niombe and Patrick, but it's something of a fusion. You know, I didn't think of confidence and as self-defense. I just it escaped me completely. I'm not, I'll confess, I'm not in favor of the uniformity of men and women. I think there are roles, natural roles, but I understand the concept of abuse as well. And I have started to think seriously about what Patrick refers to as epistemic conformity, especially with the leadership of Africa. Our leaders just lack the confidence and the education to take on the world that they need to take on, the issues where they need to depart from the box, the Bretton Woods box. They sit in the box. And the examples that Patrick gave about nations that have escaped the box, they've not escaped completely. They're still not carrying on like they know what it is they want and what it is they want of their or for their nations. They are trying to balance interests. And someone like Donald Trump is insisting on conformity of stereotypes. And, I mean, Zelensky was ridiculed. I'm not sure why, but these guys are trying to get us to conform to very aberrant behaviors. Yeah, that's my 2 cents worth.
I think the Zelensky thing is quite simple.
Yeah.
Inferiority complex on behalf of Trump. Because I mean, here's a short guy who has so much more, confidence, knowledge, sense of self, direction, and and there's the orange clown from the United States. We've Trump has come up earlier, and I think he will come up for as long as he's there, because this is such a shock to everything that we've built up for the past, I don't know, 80 years. Good and bad, but it is a complete destruction of everything.
I don't think he's able to understand the consequences and the implications of what he's doing. I don't think he's gonna get it, most likely, anytime in his life. He's pretty old already. So.
Kind of missed the chance.
Yeah, but he's put like this fees. It was on the news earlier today, like $100,000 on getting the H-1B visa. So did
So one of the things that Naomi was talking about women and leadership. So Nordic Bildung is a very small organization, but technically I am the leader here. And I speak as the leader of Nordic Bildung, and I have experienced something that I've never experienced before, which is that men start talking to me as if I'm an idiot. They've never talked to me as if I'm an idiot before, but if there is sort of if we're sort of if they're leaders too, some of them just can't talk to me as somebody who's on par with them, who's their equal. And a couple of times I've called it out and said, don't talk to me as if I'm an idiot. And they're usually shocked when I say it, but I just don't want to sit there, especially not in my own office, and being talked to as if I'm 12 years old. And it's a new
That's
experience for me.
but I think
I'm losing your sound now. I don't know if others can hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I think her network is bad.
Can you hear me now?
Maybe you should turn off your video for whilst you speak. Maybe.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I was saying, I think for men, when they meet a woman who is in a position of power, for them, the moment they notice that you are actually, academically or sound-minded and you're challenging them in many aspects, their first instinct is to belittle you as a woman. So, and that is why they speak to us like, we're 12-year-olds, as you put it, because they think, oh, so this woman thinks she can do things better than us. So it's more of an inferiority complex. And this is why I say a woman is not less human. A woman doesn't have less of a brain. The best you can do is to engage on that level and try and learn something. But it's very hard for men to conform to that. And the only way to get out is to belittle the woman, which is not a good thing. But for me, I actually call it cowardice, because then I know that I have actually intimidated you and I've brought something to the table that is worth discussing.
Yes.
And the colonial experience, I think, I'm just 60 years afterwards, I'm just beginning to process what happened to me as a child, where we were told in school, speaking native languages is an offense. I grew up thinking, hey, my language is inferior to English. And I moved through life thinking this way. Only recently have I started to understand the psychological damage that this single event and that colonialism was a device to get the colonized to conform to this inferior status. It was, I've never, kind of processed it along these lines. I think I got out of that colonial mindset many years ago, but somewhere in the background, it allows people like Trump to stand there and wag their fingers at African leaders, and African leaders get to tremble.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus, he invents new African countries whenever he speaks to them.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, he is so uninformed and stupid. It's incredible.
But to think of Trump as a stupid man is a danger in itself. This fellow is not a man. He's representing an institution made up of very deviant minds. So to think of him as a stupid man is to miss the point. This people are trying to get the world to conform to a series of aberrant values. The disinformation, chaos, all of it in a bid for control.
So what would be the way to get African leaders to sort of, I don't know what to call it, but get that sense of collective self-confidence or direction, or step up to, I don't know what to call it, but
I'll leave this to Patrick. Patrick,
yeah, I
what
was
do you
just about
think?
to say, I think Patrick has that one.
Yes.
Well, if Dr. Folari is leaving it to me, I think he's not being fair. As someone who ran Nigeria's biggest think tank, working directly with the president, he should have a point of view. But I mean, seriously, I don't think it's an easy question to answer because there are so many complicated aspects to this. The process through which we select our leadership is broken. So it's not like we have a rigorous process where our best and brightest assume leadership positions. In fact, it appears that we scrape the bottom of the barrel, to look for people who emerge in leadership. So if you have someone who's not prepared for it, someone who's not taking time to educate themselves, it doesn't matter what you do. When they try to do something that's difficult and they see it as difficult, they give up and they default to their natural position. So these are part of the challenges. Now, are we going to give up? I don't think so. I think that part of what we need to do is to continue to engage, to continue to show that there's a different way to achieve what it is that we're seeking, which is development. Some of it could be in driving, various discourse sessions, engaging actively with the leadership, helping them secure some wins. So we need to get our leaders to win something. And it is in winning that they gain that confidence. But it's difficult. And it's something that we've been engaging with, day in, day out for God knows how long. We also look at the private sector, to see if there's something that we can achieve on the private sector side that even the government can take credit for, just to build up their confidence, that they can get stuff done. But it's a difficult path.
Niambe, what do you think of this business of confidence as self-defense?
For African leaders, I think they just, they are stuck in limbo in the sense that they know the right thing to do. They know what is right for their people. But they also have the fear of falling out of favor with the powers that be, because their biggest fear is actually getting out of power. So they are compromised in that sense, even if they know the right thing. And I'll give you an example of, I'll talk about Robert Mugabe, the Zimbabwean president. He went through radical measures to try and get his people on his side when he came with the land, I don't know what they're calling it, land reforms, where they were saying, if you're a Zimbabwean, you can just go to a white man's farm and take over that farm. I think that was inhumane, and also it was the wrong way of doing things, because now they had chaos. People were taking over, people were dying, and he eventually lost favor. Even with the funders, he was sanctioned, very heavily sanctioned, to a point that to date, Zimbabwe has not recovered economically from that. And so the biggest fear is just being in limbo. Can they just attain the confidence, come up with policies that will favor their people and, and not fear of what the outsiders, who are the controllers of, I don't want to point at anyone specifically, but they are the controllers of the economy, of the world economy. I think that's my take. So for them to actually defend their people properly, they need to stand firm on what is right and just create policies that are going to make Africa self-sustainable so that we win ourselves from this so-called begging bowl syndrome.
You know, Lina, I feel that people oscillate between just belligerent defense of a position and subservience. This really is about knowledge, what people know. You know, it's taken me like 20 years to finally understand government, the power of the state versus the power of markets and the private sector, and being able to craft what looks like balanced policy in it all. I feel as if there is no the gap between what Patrick defines as scraping the bottom of the barrel and the leadership can only be bridged by knowledge. Perhaps karate is a form of knowledge, and we need to kick these guys into some sort of shape. But there is no preparation in Africa for leadership. The guy wakes up, he's a crook, he makes money, and the following day he's the president. What's he going to do there?
So one thing that I have written about, and I haven't heard very many other people speak about it, is that besides the colonialism and the West stealing a lot of resources and enslaving people and doing all kinds of horrible stuff, if we look at the way that our economies evolved, it was local investments that created a profit that stayed within the same economy, which means that whoever made a lot of money on whatever it was sent that money back out into the local community to work. So I mean, the oligarchs of 200 years ago, they would build a mansion with local craftsmen and artisans, and then they would start another factory locally, and then they would industrialize a field, and then that profit would stay in the same economy. What is happening outside the West is that, and perhaps also some Russian and Arabic investors, it's money from the outside that creates a profit that is pulled out of the economy again, whether it's raw materials or any kind of industry production. It's not local investors who get the profit and who then send that money back out into the economy. And by not having an industrialization and creating a job market, democracy as we know it is really strongly connected to there being a working class and investors and a bourgeoisie and a local economy, because what else are you going to vote about if not the economy and how to distribute the wealth created by that economy? If you don't really have a lot of economic questions and money to fight over, there's probably going to be a lot of clans and ethnic groups that are struggling to stay in power, and you can't really have a political structure around that. So there's some structural and economic problems and situations that are just fundamentally different around the globe, and that I think makes politics and political leadership very different, if not harder, and to some extent impossible. So, but yes, knowledge. And now we have people back from the breakout rooms. I hope that nobody is still out there in cyberspace getting lost. I hope we got everybody back into the main room. So let's hear if there are any questions or comments or things you want to know from the speakers. And please raise your hand with the little digital thing, because we can see that on the screen. We can't see that if you just wave your hand.
Or you can type in your questions in the chat as well. That's fine.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this very resounding discussion. But just to add on, I was listening in as you guys were discussing, and especially about Africa. I think there is a background that I think has to be added on to the discussion, especially about the African leaders and the presidents. More so those that have come from opposition and have seen what needs to be done. I have typical examples of African leaders who ascended, but then when they get onto power, things change because wanting a good thing and then now being in a position whereby there's a cost of your position, a cost of you retaining power, and also on the other side, you being popular is something that the African leaders fail to balance. Naomi spoke about Robert Mugabe. I'm from Zimbabwe. I've close up experience like that. He meant well for the Zimbabwean people, but because of the dependency that is there. Okay, so I was explaining that Naomi mentioned about Zimbabwe. I'm from Zimbabwe. I have a close-up experience with the Zimbabwean situation. And Robert Mugabe meant well for the Zimbabwean people. But like I explained, because of the dependency that has been there, these economies have been designed in a way that they cannot sustain themselves and they cannot thrive away from the support and the markets that the US and the Europe can create for them. There was sanctions which were imposed on Zimbabwe, travel bans into Europe. Zimbabwe could not export agreed upon before, where the Britons were supposed to compensate Zimbabwe for the land that the settlers had taken up. But that was not seen through. Then when Robert went back, went falling out of favor with his people in Zimbabwe, he wanted to use that as a trump card, and the Britons refused even to compensate. How they executed the grabbing of the land was inhumane, as Naomi said, but the idea behind it was noble, because the agreement was that this was supposed to have been taken back and compensated. Now, because of that act, Zimbabwe was isolated from trade. In Zimbabwe, it can't produce anything, it's not sitting on oil, apart from the agriculture. So now, those that had the know-how left, and Zimbabwe became crumpled. So here's the thing, how do we balance? If the West are not trading with the Southern Africans, the Africans, how do they survive? Because they are sustained. We have copper in Zambia, but they can never process it up into a finished product. We have diamonds in Zimbabwe, but there's no market for them. It's controlled and maintained from a high level, which is now dependent on other economies. So now, can I be a president, wake up today and then come up and say, I'll do away with the West, and then I'll see how life would be. My people will starve. The case in study is the Zimbabwe situation. People are starving, yet it's one case to just say, okay, we'll go with what you say, then they'll come and take whatever this they want to take, but then the economy will be controlled by them. So yeah, that's my contribution to that.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful question, Patrick. And Naomi, do you want to take it?
I mean, I can make an attempt. I doubt anybody will say they've got an answer. If we had an answer, we wouldn't be discussing this topic. But it's really to say that it's a difficult problem. So he talked about people in opposition getting there, and then they realize, it's different. Well, first of all, sometimes we underestimate how broken the system is. We underestimate how difficult it is to fix the system, and that some of the top line ideas we come up with, we need to dig a bit deeper. In the case of Nigeria, if you're able to figure out and understand what the problem is, then you need to come up with a solution. And sometimes when we talk about these things in Nigeria, they say, oh, we've got so many policies and programs, the problem is implementation. Well, not quite, because sometimes that policy is wrong, because it was built on the wrong structure. You didn't have the right data to understand the issues to even begin to design a policy around it. But let's even assume that the policy is right. Then you go to the challenge of implementation. The human capital that you need to implement. Most of the guys who are smart enough have left the country. Those who are in the country are struggling to survive. The people who are in the bureaucracy did not get there because they're the smartest people. They got there because they knew someone in government who appointed them. So even if you had the right intention, you have a good understanding of what the issues are, you still have to implement with people who may not be up to scratch. But what I've talked about here is just problems. You know, we're not going to fold up and die. Yeah. So how do you solve it? I think it is just to realize that this problem is difficult and to just knuckle down and figure out, you know, some approaches that moves the dial. You know, sometimes again, we assume that we can solve all the problems overnight. That would be great, you know, but my experience tells me that what we should be shooting for is just to keep making some progress, whilst having a big idea that we're chasing. In the case of Zimbabwe, just observing it from what I've read about the situation, I think Mugabe found himself in a catch-22. You know, he played himself into a cul-de-sac. He had to negotiate with, you know, many of the old freedom fighters, and he also had to negotiate with the West. And it was a difficult situation he found himself in. But I think if there was a way he could have sold to the people that the solution is not taking back the land. You know, you can take back the land, but if you don't know what to do with the land, we're all worse off. You know, they could have done what, you know, the guys in Mauritius did, you know, where you seek a way, or even what South Africa attempted to do before they messed it up, you know, the BEE, where you say, okay, there's some level of accommodation, yeah, but it's not to take over the goose that lays the golden egg. You cut it up and then you don't have the goose, you don't have the eggs, you know. So just to say that these are difficult situations, but all I'm hoping is that we get a set of human beings who say to themselves, we have a difficult problem, but we can solve it. And if we apply ourselves, we'll try some things, they will work, some others will not work, but we keep pushing forward until we get some answers. Over.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what Naomi said as well about how progress is incremental. You don't get all the way in a single attempt. And yeah, I guess that makes sense. Lena.
So one of the things that we've actually talked about in a couple of the other sessions here during the trip around the globe is the countries or the system or the region that is broken. Our two speakers from Israel talked about Israel being broken. They talked about the Middle East being broken. We had somebody speaking from Oceania, which we're now going to call Blue Atlantic, but and she's from Papua New Guinea or New Guinea, and she talked about how the Europeans categorized the indigenous peoples among the flora and fauna. And so there's this what Fullerene was talking about while you were in the breakout rooms about how the indigenous language and the indigenous culture has just been looked down upon by the Europeans and eventually by people themselves. And then there's this whole brokenness of the system because it has not been allowed to go through an organic development from before the Europeans arrived and into the modern, postmodern day and age that we are in now, and where we have all the technologies and the globalization and Zoom meetings and all you know, all kinds of things that are really cool and wonderful, and also some stuff that's not cool and wonderful. But there is this, there are all these sort of gaps between the local development, the local meaning making, the local language, the local epistemology, and then the world that everybody needs to function in, because that is the world that is, and that there are some enormous economic powers and technological powers that are just defining what is happening, and it's hard enough in the West among the people who have the best education. I can't even imagine what it's like in the poorest countries with a lot of people who have no education. So I mean, it's like there are these immense gaps between what people can actually do with the capabilities that they have, and then the world that we're in. And so in that respect, I think all the systems are broken, but they're broken in different ways and to a different extent. But we are really fighting with, if not broken systems, then insufficient system. And if they're not insufficient, they're probably broken.
I mean, I can respond a bit to that. Things are broken, but we all have enough to start, right? We all have enough to start. What I think is missing, especially in the African context, is that we haven't recorded enough wins, that we now have a confidence deficit. We haven't seen a lot of successes that tells us to move on to the next success. And let me use a slightly different example to see if I can explain this. When I was growing up, the books we read, in the storybooks we read, the people we saw on TV, it was all Hollywood, right? So we didn't know that what we had, what our parents had, what our parents grew up with, etc., had value, right? And many of the musicians at the time tried to sound like Michael Jackson. So we had Nigerian musicians that sounded like Michael Jackson, and they were not successful. You know, they didn't make the big breakouts, right? And then you come to this generation, and you've got a different generation of people, you know, who grew up not really under those big influences, you know, so the Gen Zs and the Gen Ys and whatever, you know, they grew up knowing that they are okay, that they are enough. And they embraced Afrobeat, and Afrobeat today has been exported to the world. I mean, the whole of Europe was dancing to Afrobeat this summer, right? It is that confidence. It is the confidence that allowed people to use, you know, just video cameras to start recording films and turn Nollywood into the third fastest growing movie industry in the world, that gave these young kids the confidence that they can sing in Yoruba, sing in Igbo, sing in Hausa, and the guy in Europe who doesn't understand what is being said can still dance to the beat, right? Some other folks are going to build on the back of that confidence and start unicorns in tech because someone has said to them, you're enough. You can win in this world, right? It is that victory that we need for our public sector to taste. We need governments in Africa to do something, no matter how small it is, and record some success. And it will give them more confidence to try something else, to try something else, to try something else. And I think that's why I centered this around dignity, confidence, that first of all, if you have a sense of self, if you know that you're enough, that brings the confidence and the courage, you know, to try something. And the little successes will lead to more successes. Over.
Yeah, agreed. And I really liked your example about Michael Jackson. I think that I think it really also shows why sometimes people choose to follow people who are nonconformists, because they're still not the first person initiating the change. And so it's so much safer to be the people who are following Michael Jackson than to actually become a Michael Jackson, right? So it takes a certain kind of person to be the first people who are building that confidence. And then, like you said, that track record of success inspires more people to do something similar. Fullerin.
I want to go back to, sorry.
Naomi, do you want to speak?
I want to go back to an idea of incremental progress. I think we must be careful, Africa must be careful about the concept of incremental progress as different from what Patrick is describing, which is some safe to fail experiments. Ideas that are put out in the knowledge that these ideas can fail. But we have to try several things and communicate those things. There's a communication problem as well. Communicate those things to the leaders who are not in the business of social experiments. They are in the business of maintaining power. So they don't want to try anything. Somebody has to put these ideas on the table and run with it. Okay, that's it.
Nayombe, can you please
Hi.
either turn off your microphone or speak up, because
I was about to
we
speak
got
actually.
good. We want you to speak. Thank you.
So I just wanted to add on before, was it Smith, before he came in, I wanted to add on to what Patrick said. And Smith actually touched on another point in terms of trying new things. You know, I think it happens even in karate. I was bringing it back to karate actually, because now when we talk about the tech world, even sport has moved that way. And the karate in particular, because the leaders, like the founders, the so-called founders of karate in Zambia actually believe that the olden way is the best way to do things. But they're not learning new things or relearning how we can now incorporate the tech in how we conduct our tournaments. You know, now we've gone digital. We're no longer using the flags. I know a lot of you don't understand, but in terms of a tournament, we have a blue flag and a red flag to give scores to the players. So one wears a red belt, the other one wears a blue belt. So you'd have flags, blue and red, and just lift up the flag. But with the coming of tech, now you have to use a joystick where now you're pressing to give the score to the other player. And it's this thing of trying to hold on to the norm and not conforming to the world, the way the world is moving. So people are finding it difficult to try out new things because of that, because they are afraid of losing that power. That's what I wanted to contribute.
Hello? Hello?
We can hear you.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, sure. I think these are very insightful contributions that I'm hearing here. And speaking on the context of Africa and African leaders, it's a very sad discussion we'd have, because the findings will still be the same, regardless of whether it's West Africa, Southern Africa, or Central Africa. I've been close to politicians, I've been close to very powerful people, even the presidents, and doing some work for them. Every man, when he's born, where he's born and raised, there are some values which are put into them. But then the system has been made in a way that it puts these people in a corner where they will not be who they are, who they've been selling when they get into positions. And like we are saying, we know, everyone knows what's good. And a lot of people have been persecuted, they've been prosecuted for their crimes as leaders while they were in office. And most of these monies that they steal and misappropriate, they never use them. These are figures just sitting in somewhere. But it's the greed that is dangled, that is awakened by the cows that are dangled before them. We have a common problem of leadership and uplifting values in Africa. And our leaders cannot stand in and be the right people that we require them to be. There are a few, and those few, when they stand up, they become uncommon and they are flushed out of the system. How so? Because the moment that you stand in for something that is right, and you are being fed by another person or another source, it means you are ready for you to go for another day, another week, or another month, another year without eating. How and what are you going to explain to your kids? So the problem that we have goes beyond us changing leaders. We need to have a system change, whereby before you even think of attaching a name to the presidency, to up to the local levels of ruling, we need to make sure that we have cleaned how things happen. Because in the West, as I see on TVs, as I see in movies, the policeman is your next safest place, not in Africa. A policeman comes to you to get what they can get from you, yet they're supposed to be your helper. So what does that leave us? Where does that leave us? If I get a laptop stolen, I have to pay for me to get investigations going on, for me to get someone getting arrested, for me to recover my laptop. And it's a system, it's not a person. I can change where I report it from, but I will receive the same reception everywhere. So it's a holistic approach that needs to be changed. And I think only God can help us on this, unfortunately.
Naomi, Patrick, do you have anything to respond to him?
I mean, I feel
No,
I feel
I
his
think
pain. Okay, go ahead, Naomi.
I think he's summed it up in a nutshell. And like I said, it boils down to you holding on to what it is and not changing the system, because the system is, for lack of a better term, too rotten for one person to change. And you even know, no matter where you go, it'll be the same thing that is going to happen to you in terms of how the system runs. So we need to learn, relearn, and do what is right for our people, whether it's in sport, economics, the way we run our mines and all that, because we know in Africa that the mining actually is what runs our economies, but it's still controlled outside, and it's too deep a system to just break abruptly. And that's where the confidence comes in for our leaders. Can they get that confidence to say, I'm going to put my foot down and do what is right for my people?
I've just been struggling to see if there's a way to simplify and put a ribbon around the issues we're discussing, and there's none. These issues are complicated. If we start from the very beginning, I think one of the first things we need to fix on the continent is the way leaders emerge. If, for instance, so most of us have adopted democracy, which I still believe is the best system for us. But if the elections are just mere procedural, and they're rigged and the wrong people get into power, you're going to get the wrong people trying to solve problems, So we need to fix the elections process. That's one. But even if you fix that and you got the right people to into power, you still need Dumisani, if you can mute. So even if you got the right system to get the right people in power, you now need to fix the issues with competence. The human beings, the human capital who will do the work. You fix that, then you need to get the people to believe that their leaders can actually deliver. And because another thing you've got going right now is this great trust deficit that has led to people being disengaged. The people are not engaging with their leaders anymore because they don't expect the leaders to be able to do anything for them. So there's some education that needs to happen to re-engage, to get the people to re-engage. There are no easy answers. The work we do, the firm I run, we've taken a certain position. Number one, we've assumed that the people in power really want to do the right things, but they don't have the right knowledge. So we spend a lot of effort in trying to engage and educate and see if we can get them thinking about issues the right way. Number two, that the system is broken in terms of human capital and that there's got to be a lot of hand-holding to help any real leader who wants to get anything done. And then number three, to show them that this thing is possible, that you can actually become immortal by getting basic things done. So yes, you can steal money, but you can gain immortal glory, by getting just little things done. And I'm talking about really, really little things. And if we're successful and we can get a few of them delivering, then maybe others will look at the success, so if there's one or two governors who can get stuff done, then the others can look at that and say, okay, we want to do better, and so on and so forth. So that's the way we look at it. But it's not an easy journey at all. Not for the people in power and not for the followers. Over.
Yeah, I personally also have a question, if I can ask, and then we have a little bit of time for maybe one or two more questions. So Patrick, I'm curious because I know we spoke a lot about confidence. Do you think there's only a deficit in confidence, or do you also think there's a deficit in capacity? And if so, how do you target one while you're targeting the other without everything falling through the cracks?
I'm hoping, I'm trying not to say that there's a deficit of everything, but there's definitely a deficit of capacity, and I spoke about it in the lecture I try to rush. And there's also a deficit of confidence. You see, if you have capacity helps build confidence, yeah? Part of the lack of confidence is that they don't have the capacity. There's a picture I posted a while back on my social media page, and it's a picture of the senior leadership in Nigeria, the president and some ministers. They show up to negotiate with, the German government, and Merkel is sitting there with her ministers. And in front of Merkel and everyone, they've got files and folders of papers, and, they came prepared. And you look in front of the Nigerians, they had nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yeah. No sheets of paper, no pen, no paper, nothing. Yeah. What that said to me is these are people who showed up to be told what to do. Yeah. Not people who came to negotiate. Now, if you've lost confidence in your ability to meet with your peers and decide what is best for your people, you just show up with nothing. And that showing up with nothing is also because they had no capacity in that room. If they had people, advisors, ministers who had capacity, they would know we're going to negotiate, we'll think about it, and then, we'll come prepared. So a lack of capacity leads to a lack of confidence, which leads to just taking that beggarly position that anything that is given to you, you take, right? And I don't think we have time to deal with one and then go deal with the other. Where we are on the continent is that we've got to just deal with everything at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Does anyone have any more questions? We can take one more.
I don't have a question. More of a comment. Any student of complexity would recognize what is going on. All we can do is take the position that we are only going to be able to nudge some of these variables, whether it's competence, whether it's trust, whether it's the imposition of the Bretton Woods. We're only going to be able to push some of these things a little at a time and design experiments that do not terrify the leadership. I think there is no avenue for people like Patrick to get into government. There is no avenue for what they are doing to be put on the president's table. We have these barriers, these gatekeepers around every president. The president of the Cameroons is in his 90s. We know that this man is no longer the president, but there are gatekeepers who benefit from the system and pretend that he's still in charge. In fact, he's going to run again until he's, I don't know how to describe it, but he's going to run again. This arrangement must be brought to the point where ideas can be infused into the president's or into the presidency or into the governorship without threatening these people. The lack of confidence means that anything they do not understand is viewed as a threat. They see it as coming from the opposition. Anytime you don't agree with their position to agree with the Bretton Woods conformity arrangements is seen as, and the Bretton Woods people take advantage of this mentality. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that someone at 91 can still be president.
Yes.
But I think this discussion has been super interesting. The perspectives that you guys have shared has been so valuable. I think we're going to start doing a couple of things to wrap up. Firstly, I think we'll go through the survey results and see if coffee won or if human beings won. I think that's something we need to know. And then we're also doing the next global equinox on the 21st of March 2026. And if you guys want to join the team, there's also information that we're going to give you right now.
Yes. So we do not have a web page ready for the next event yet, but after this event, I will send out an email to everybody who signed up with a link for the next event. We're going to find a title for it. We haven't found that yet, but we can definitely have a date and a link, and you can go in and sign up for it, and maybe come with some good suggestions for what the theme should be next time. The mail will also include all the links that have been shared in the various sessions. And on that note, I am going to reveal the results of the little survey that we made. But before we see the survey, we're just going to see the there we go, the map. So you can see we're spreading across the globe here, and if somebody has not been to the map yet, I know that Robert will be more than happy to share the link for the Padlet in the chat. And so you just click on that link and you get to the world map. You will recognize this map, and in the bottom right hand corner there's a pink dot with a plus sign. You click on that, and then you can enter the town or street that you're in, and then you will appear with a pin on the map. And here comes the result of the survey. What is the most significant contribution from the African culture zone? And the pyramids are not it. I would say all 10-year-olds around the globe will be very sad to hear that, because pyramids and dinosaurs tend to be the like big thing when you're from 6 to 12 years old. At least they were when I was about that age. So no pyramids. Coffee and the Stone Axe, nope. And then we have humans and Ubuntu fighting over first place here. I don't know. I will let you think about that and see which one of those two you prefer. I think they're equally good suggestions, except that Ubuntu probably wouldn't have been here without the humans. So, but that's a philosophical question. I will leave that up to you, and we will give the final word to our guests. If you have something, the speakers, if you have something that you would like to say before we conclude, a final word, a final thought, or something.
I was about to yield to Nyambe, but yeah, I mean, just to say thank you for inviting me, and just to reiterate that I believe strongly that, you know, when African leaders assume the dignity, the self-worth that lies within, and they train themselves and they're open to be trained, and they can build the confidence and the courage to engage with the challenges that face us, you know, then we can begin to, you know, build our way out of the really sad situation we're in. But again, thank you so much for having me.
I see that we have some of our Ukrainian, our two Ukrainian speakers here, who are ready for the next session. We have Sergey, and then we have Natalia, and we are going to hear about how they're starting folk high schools in Ukraine, and how a different kind of colonialism is trying to change Ukraine, and that's not going to happen. So we got Sergey and Natalia on the job. So we're looking forward to hearing that in about 20 minutes, half an hour. Nyambe, are you still with us and would like to get a final word? Yes.
Sorry, I think I'd gone off for a bit, so I didn't hear the other things that were said. But just to wrap it up, and my focus will be on self-defense and karate. Let's look at it on a broader view, where we marry it to the economic dynamics of the environments that we live in. And I think it's something that can be explored further. We're trying to do that, actually. That's what I'm working on right now. And that's why I brought in that aspect. So probably in the next Bildung, if I'm given another chance to speak, I will further explain what I mean by that. But it's been a very insightful discussion, as usual, very important topics that have been brought out beyond what we had actually planned. And I'm a kind of person who rarely speaks on politics, but I was compelled to say one or two things. And I just want to thank everyone and you, Lynn, for this opportunity to, put in my two ngwe, as we call it. We don't have sense in Zambia, it's ngwes. So it was a pleasure to add in my little two ngwe in this discussion. Thank you very much. And everyone had very important and insightful things to say, which has just, opened up my mind to a lot of things. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Patrick.
All right, so if you guys are interested in hearing Sergey and Natalia speak, then please join us in about 20 minutes. We're gonna wrap up right now. Thank you for coming. We'll see you soon. I think the session will be back on in about 10 minutes, so you can jump out.
I'm gonna close down the Zoom room for 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna start it up again. So if you come back and there's no Zoom room, don't be sad, don't cry, we will be back. It's just for technical reasons that we have to close it down and start it up again. So see you in Europe in 20 minutes. It's gonna be cool. So thank you for joining.